This is Next Radio.
With Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.
Thank you. No, I didn't. That's good. But my session today is called How to Raise Money for Sport Relief and Not Kill Your Presenter. And I really don't mean kill in the sense of losing your temper, kill in the sense of impending death. So, you know the feeling. It's Sport Relief. And I was asked to exec produce it for BBC Radio again this year. I think there are lots of things that come around each year, and every time you think, how can we do it differently? And when we sat down this year, it did feel harder than usual. For a start, Chris Moyles was no longer with Radio 1. He'd been the big champion of sport relief in the past. Radio 1's audience is now younger. And as we know, teenagers have less money than 30-somethings. Oh, and the UK is having the worst recession in living memory. So, a lot to deal with right from the offset. So we wondered, how could we still make a shed load of cash for sport relief, get everyone listening, watching, sharing our content online, and get the whole of BBC Radio working together as well. Previously, each network has tended to do its own thing. So how could we pull everyone together and put BBC Radio centre stage in an event that's often dominated by TV? So the idea came out of a big creative meeting. Radio runs the world. How about radio runs the world? We thought. Not on the roads of Europe, Africa. It was too expensive. We were working with a limited budget. But virtually, on a treadmill, and plugged up cunningly to a Google Maps screen. So as you were running on the treadmill, you could see yourself moving through the streets of Mumbai or Rome, but you weren't actually there. Radio runs the world, we all thought. And so it started. So we were faced with 5 big challenges on the way. The first one being, how do you get famous names running on a treadmill without looking a little bit, dare I say it? I'm sure I've actually seen that on North Norfolk Digital. I did try and find a little clip of it, but I couldn't find it before we started. The answer was to blow what money we did have on a gorgeous David Blaine-style glass box, which I will show you here, to put it slap bang in the middle of Broadcasting House outside so the public could see what was going on, and to light it so it was a thing of beauty. You'll see that slightly cold person in the middle in red is me. We also decided on that old favourite, the ticking clock. So we gave ourselves 1 week to run, swim, cycle 25,000 miles around the world. That's the distance around the Earth's equator. And we knew it was going to be really tight. At one point I worked out 25,000 miles was going to take about 8 weeks to run on a treadmill. So we had a lot of work to do. That was challenge 1. Challenge 2 was the tech. Has anyone, there's going to be somebody in the room I know now, but has anyone ever tried to get hold of Google, like to actually speak to a person at Google, get an answer out of a person at Google? Any luck? Anyone managed it? It did take a while, but we made it. They said yes, so we were good to go on the Google Maps hooking up. But we then had to work out how we actually hooked up the treadmill to Google Maps and actually made it function. So I'm going to run this cunningly behind me now, and you can see it. There is a special R&D department at the BBC. It's a bit James Bond. They operate in hidden rooms. They're very friendly. They don't get many visitors. After my high security pass to go and see them, I explained what we were up to, and they got very excited. It turned out that actually it married a plan they had to do on TV that was so top secret they couldn't tell me about it, but they kindly agreed to work with Google, work on Google Maps to make it a kind of more streamlined, less jerky experience. And they also put a sensor underneath the treadmill. I don't know if you can see at any point. There was a sensor, so it kind of noticed when the treadmill was going around, allowed it to calculate exactly how far that person was running, and then they transferred that data to the Google Maps Street View so that as you were running, you were actually moving the same distance virtually. So it looked very cool. We mapped out routes from Calais to Naples, from San Francisco to LA, all over the world. So, challenge 3, we had the idea, we had the technology, all we needed now was some presenters to take part. And we are all, I don't know if you knew this, we're all masochists when it comes to handing over our hard-earned cash. I spoke to Comic Relief in some depth. Apparently the very best way of getting people to part with their money is to show them somebody they really like suffering on behalf of a cause they believe in. Essentially, we are all bad people. So how do we persuade some big-name presenters to put themselves through this horrible time and not kill them in the process? And this felt even more important after I saw this. A picture of Davina being hauled from a lake. I mean, there is a real risk with some of these challenges. People put an awful lot on the line. So, stepped forward Radio 1's Nick Grimshaw, Radio 2's Joe Wiley. Grimmy bravely agreed to cycle for 12 hours. He and his team planned to do 1,000 kilometres to get us on the map. Team of celebrity cyclists from Amir Khan to Professor Green and Daisy Lowe. You can see him in action, I think, here. And meanwhile, Joe Wiley would keep moving, that means walking, jogging, running, on a treadmill for a whopping 26 hours. She was going to start in her show on the Wednesday night, go right the way through the night, right the way through the next day, and then finish hosting a 2-hour show from the box. There's a picture of Joe looking quite smiley. I think at that point, I don't know how far she was in. She's smiling, that's good. It looked horrific on paper. Joe had a bad hip, and before we started, Radio 2 controller Bob Shannon collared me in a lift with the immortal words, "Do not kill Joe Wiley." Possibly a career ender, this project. So I entered a world of BBC risk assessments, which many of you will have done and enjoyed, I know. So Joe and Grimmy got checked out by a top doctor. They started training. Grimmy was advised that if you plan to cycle 12 hours on a bike, 2 pairs of shorts, double short it up, gentlemen, it avoids painful chafing. And Joe had support from 2 masterful comic relief physios who lanced blisters right the way through the night. If you can't see it, big blister there. Doesn't look anywhere near as impressive on film. It wept. It was very nasty. Anyway, she did well. But just because 2 people are doing something physically quite extraordinary for themselves doesn't make it entertaining radio. So our next challenge was to try and create something that sounds genuinely exciting on radio and not just something that's a kind of in-joke that people listening at home can't enjoy. People will rush to their tablets and iPhones to share online. So, how do we create that? How do we create that exciting, genuinely exciting event on radio? Well, on Radio 1, again, more celebrities. We got Victoria Pendleton. You can see Victoria Pendleton there, and Ellie Simmons. Lots of Olympians, Paralympians, McBusted, and more all cycled alongside Grimmy. His family turned up during one of his darkest hours. Actually quite sweet to see his face when he saw his mum. Greg James sang him a quite emotional song, and it was all fun in the box, although the pain that Grimmy was going through was kind of very palpable to everyone around. But in the run-up, we'd also sent Grimmy on a trip to Kenya to see some Comic Relief funded projects. And I think that was the killer, because he brought back some heart-stopping audio that made our listeners understand why we were doing this. And when he promoted the number on air, it sounded like he meant it, because he did. He'd seen it. He was talking about stories and people that he actually felt he knew, that he'd met. So he was able to sell that message in a really, really genuine way. Similarly, Joe and lots of Radio 2 presenters all visited UK projects, and we played audio of those throughout her 26-hour marathon. It brought lots of Radio 2 presenters into the equation, which helped hugely, and also balanced the box action. Back in the box, we had the cast of Spamalot turn up to surprise Joe, the cast of Les Mis, who made her cry. I'm not sure if at that point it was the pain or Les Mis, but the crowd got ridiculously excited about seeing Pudsey the dancing dog, and even Nigella turned up with some energy-giving homemade fudge. At 6:30 in the morning, I climbed out to go and get a few hours sleep, but Joe, seemingly indestructible, kept on walking, walking, walking. So the final challenge, really the most important one, would we raise any money? After all, that's what it was all about, raising money for good causes. Grimmy finished. He did his 12 hours, he did his 1,000 kilometres. Joe finished her marathon too. You may have seen that on news footage at the time. And incredibly, she described it not only as a career highlight, but one of the highlights of her life. I don't know if she'd say that now. She certainly said it the day after, and I'm hanging on to that. Coldplay was so in awe that they donated 260 grand to Sport Relief. That was £10,000 for every hour that Joe had spent in the box. And with the help of the Asian Network, One Extra, and Five Lives Battle of the Backsides, we raised about £750,000 in a week. But on top of that, we passed the 25,000 mile mark with the help of local radio. Our box and the stars were in it were splashed all over national newspapers, and radio around the world was all over Twitter and social media. Radio 2 got their highest ever number of unique visitors to the website. Radio 1 got their highest ever live stream viewing figures since they moved to Broadcasting House. Most crucially, I didn't kill Joe Wiley. But also, and this is something that I feel really, really strongly about actually, outside Broadcasting House Piazza, a place where traditionally money, we see the one show every day, TV has all the wealth, all the power, all the privileges, or so it seems. Radio was centre stage, and that made all of us feel great about it. So, if you are ever asked how to raise money for sport relief and not kill your presenter, here are my top 5 tips. First, make charity cool. It may be for charity, but everything you do should be as sexy and cool as your rest of your day-to-day content. Don't do something that sounds so very different it doesn't match what you're up to. Phone a techie friend. Those James Bond types don't get out much. They're there, they have knowledge, they are yours for the taking. If you sweet talk them, it's amazing what they can do. Help your presenter feel it. Grimmy was so much better because he went to Kenya. The same with Joe. I think in whatever message you're trying to get your presenters to sell, really try and help them understand why it matters. And make it event. I know Phil from TBI earlier was talking about D-Day and so on. It's the same thing here. Make the idea the star. Make it bigger than the people within it. Whether it's fireworks, Les Mis, people in costume, or a dancing jog, make sure it's something the audience will remember and something that they can share through visual images on social media. And finally, look after your presenter, quite seriously, because they are putting themselves on the line for you. We all ask presenters to do things that maybe sometimes we would really, really happy not to do ourselves. So do make sure they emerge in one piece. Thank you very much.
This is Next Radio.
With Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.